Welcome back. Our next guest has transitioned from radio to television. Sean Plater is the general manager of Howard University's public television and radio station. Sean made his big move after helping the university create Washington, D.C.'s most popular music radio channel. I spoke with Sean in our offices here in Washington, D.C. We sat down to talk about what he's done with the local radio operation, which is well positioned in the local ratings.
Hey, good. How you doing?
And what his plans are for the video side of the Howard University operation.
Come right this way. I read somewhere that you had a love affair with radio at a young age. Talk to me about that.
I did. So I realized that, I'm just amazed by how you could sit in this room and talk behind this microphone and everybody all over the area or the region could hear what was going on in this room, And so I had a chance when I was maybe 12 to go sit in a radio studio, and I just was amazed by this show that was going on, and people were in their car and their home and they're hearing all of it. And that was it for me. I just knew that I had to be a part of this, this phenomenon of people hearing you all over the place and this conversation happening here. And that was really it for me, with radio. And ironically, television started even younger. When I was probably about 2, I was in love with a series called Eyewitness News. And some of my first words were eyewitness newscasts. And so I guess I was destined for TV and radio even at a young age.
But what's funny about that is I have this connection with you in that, in a young age, I was just like, I want to get into radio. I want to be a broadcaster. But saying it, you almost feel like, it's absurd. Like you say it to your parents, like you don't know anybody who's actually a broadcaster. Right. And you say this to them. And I have to say, my dad was like, oh, I think you'd be great at it. But I had an uncle who was like, son, he put his arm around me and he's like, people they fail at this sort of thing. Right. I'm a banker. You should get into banking. Did you run up against any of the naysayers along the way?
Oh, absolutely. And probably more so even for me because I wanted to be behind the scenes. I enjoy how the stations work together, how the different departments come together and what you do in engineering and sales and traffic and all these different departments. So people really don't understand that. They understand the person, out front. And so trying to really explain that, it's like, well, maybe you should go get a government job or something that, is a little more stable because this is, taking a while, but you kind of have to work your way up. But for me, I enjoyed every piece. And a lot of my background is even in operations and engineering. And so my conversations with my engineer are great. We're talking about microphones. And he's like, I've never been able to talk to anybody about this stuff, but we're also talking to the production guy about the production, the traffic, something's wrong with traffic and how it's coming in. And so we're able to really have conversations. I think our staff really appreciates having somebody that can relate to what they're going through. Now, I have to say we've changed systems since I was doing some of it, so I may not be able to do everything on the consoles and everything now, but the concepts are the same.
Sean helped Howard University Radio navigate changing media consumption habits as more and more listeners were switching off the radio and tuning into other devices. Sean guided the operation into this new terrain. Now his job is to do the same thing with television, with viewers trading in their antennas and cutting the cable cord in favor of streaming platforms.
You said systems have changed. There is no profession, I think, that undergoes dramatic changes so quickly than the profession that we're in. And you really kind of have to stay out in front of the game. And that's not easy. How do you do it?
Well, it's a lot of reading, and looking into, what's going on and what's the future of what we're doing. Television, there's a new standard, Next Gen TV. We wanted to be ahead of that. So we were a part of the launch here in Washington, D.C. to bring that to the market. And so we found that to be a technology that may not even take off for the consumers in another 3 to 4 years. But we've always had this space of just being innovative. We're owned by a university where the motto is truth and service, and so service is a big part of what we do. So we look at how we broadcast, what we create, what we develop as a service to the community that we provide every day. And so how can we use this technology to provide a greater service to the audience and the residents of Washington, D.C.?
We spoke to Joel Tater out in Southern California, innovator, created this program, The Tomorrow Show, back in the day when they didn't really have broadcasts that late at night. And basically they told him just do whatever you want to do. And he was basically given like a canvas and you could create whatever you want. Those days are over. Back then, there were only a few broadcasters on the air, ABC, CBS, and NBC. Today, there are hundreds and hundreds of channels. There's social media. There's pressure on you to deliver. How do you break through the clutter, and how much time do you spend thinking about that?
Well, one of the things that we do is really, I always ask our staff, what is our why? What is our why? People have, 24 hours in a day. Let's say they sleep for 8 hours, there's another 16 hours. They spend time on the internet, they spend time watching television, radio, doing other things of life. So what is our why as to why they should spend a moment with us in the course of their day? And I think as long as we ask ourselves that question every day and be able to have a solid answer as to why this content matters, why what we're putting together should give me 2 to 3 minutes of your day. If I'm scrolling the internet for, there's research that say people spend 2 to 3 hours a day, if not on the low end on the internet, and so what is it that allows them to watch my video on there? So what are we creating that really allows people to want to spend time with us? And I think that's really what we've used as a motto, of always being able to answer that question of why, because there's a lot of television, there's podcasts, there's YouTube. You can spend hours on YouTube just watching content. And so really being able to think about what are the needs of the audience that we're trying to reach, and are we super serving them in what we're creating?
Let me ask you about attention span, because we talked about young people and they've got their devices and that sort of thing. How do we package this really thoughtful stuff in a way that it's perhaps entertaining, or is that a bridge too far? I mean, are these some of the things that you think about quite a bit?
Absolutely. We're really thinking about how we present. For instance, there's tons of documentaries that we run, through PBS or something that we do locally, and they're just incredible. But trying to get people there, the bridge to get them there can be tough. And so, we're really looking at how we present it on social media. So you almost have to tell the audience why you need to see this. So we're trying to pull out now in these stories why it should matter to you in the audience, not just, the story of this happening tonight at 8. It's just not enough. You've got to tell people why. I guess it's back to the why. Why should they spend time watching this documentary or this arts in the community show, and why should it actually matter to them? And so that's in our presentation of how we market the station, how we post on social media, and we're even down to looking at how we post on different platforms, Facebook versus Instagram versus Twitter versus YouTube. You can't post the same thing in each place because people consume the media different. So it's it's getting very intense with the way that we pump this content out. But those are the conversations that we're having internally to really look at ways to reach the audience.
But packaging it on all these different platforms, that must just keep you up at night.
Well, it does. But I will say we've got some really good staff members who get it, who get the mission and what we're trying to do. And so we're figuring this out.
When I first got into this business, you'd get to an event and you had to get your live truck, and it had to get you had to go through all these steps to get on the air. Now it seems like anybody can be a content creator and they can just slap it on YouTube. And so you're not just competing against other broadcasters or even social media platforms. It just seems like everyone can be a content creator.
Right. Well, I think for us is really doubling down on the brand of who we are. We're a trusted source in the city, and people come to us because they have an expectation for us to deliver, truth, and it's got a reputation of years of, we got 40 years in television, 50 years in radio, so we're delivering truth and stuff that they can trust every single day versus somebody just popping up with a phone.
Is there a benefit to that, though, in a sense? I mean, I think of George Floyd. I mean, Clearly, if a news camera doesn't get there, that happens, it's not documented. The fact that somebody can lift up their phone, it's changing the world in a sense.
Absolutely, because think about had we not had that clip, it just would have been a story with a he said, she said. And so video, it's almost like what happened in the 1960s with social justice and what was going on in the South, where a lot of times people heard what was going on, but you didn't know what a hose looked like hitting people until you actually saw it, or what a dog looks like attacking somebody until you actually saw it. And so it's the same thing. Now we saw the knee on George Floyd's neck. It's a total different experience than when I just told you about it, because you actually got to see it with your own eyes. And so I think that is the opportunity where now sometimes we're going to Twitter for a video clip that may have come from, somebody who was on the site. And I think video as a whole has changed. It's changed news. It changed us as a culture, just what we're able to see and visualize, and it tells stories in and of itself.
Those viewer habits are upending the media landscape. Television viewership is down by a third since the last decade. But 80 million Americans still tune into public broadcasting programs monthly. The difference today, viewership is mostly done on the audience's own time. Over 40 million now tune in using apps or view on their home computers.
Back in the day when you were saying Eyewitness News is a little one, maybe even before that time, as I mentioned, 3 networks. Then you'd have somebody like Walter Cronkite who would say, that's the way it is. Right. And that was the way it is. You may not like what he said. You might not like the news, but that was the news. It was gospel. Mm-hmm. Today, you'd say, well, no, that's not the way it is. I'll find somebody who will tell me the way it is. And it may not be accurate, or it might be information, but they're leaving out serious pieces of information and context in a way to skew it to your liking. Talk to me about the environment you're in right now, and how alarming is that? How worrisome is that for you? And how do we change that, or can we change that?
Yeah, it's very, very concerning that we're in a place where you can have the same news story and hear it told 10 different ways based on what, somebody's opinion is or what they want you to take out of it. And so, being a PBS station, it's really important for us to be a trusted source. And so we really believe in being honest and truthful with the facts of what's going on. We don't need to make up your mind for you. Our job is to give you the facts of the story and make sure they're accurate, they're truthful. And at that point, it's up to you to make the decision as to what, this means to you or how it impacts your life. And so we try to go the extra mile to make sure that we're being that trusted source and that we're not putting extra sauce into anything that you're listening to, that you're really getting the true story the way it should be. But I think as broadcasters, we just have to continue to try to stay in that line and tell the truth, and be factual in what we're delivering. And I know for us, that's something we will not go away from.
It's also politics.
Being based in Washington, D.C., and as an alumnus of Howard, Sean and his students find themselves surrounded by history, some of it still in the making.
So one of the interesting things is the Vice President of the United States went to your university back in the 80s. There were a lot of anti-apartheid protests in this community at that time. And as you know, it's a cultural melting pot. There's politics. There's so many things stirring into this cauldron that is Washington, D.C., which makes it a unique market. How do you kind of address that with your program?
Well, we really believe in telling our audience why what's going on. Number one, what's going on, but why it matters to them. And so if there's bills in Congress being passed, what does that mean? How does that trickle down to affect me? And so we have a show called The Daily Drum, where it runs every day on radio, it runs monthly on the television station. But it really dives into the issues of what's going on around us and allows you to, one, be informed about it, but also to be educated so that you know how to handle some of the situations and things that are going on. But I think that's a part of our job, to really tell the story of what's going on so that people aren't just driving up and down the streets of Washington, but start to understand what's actually happening around us and how it actually affects you in the communities that you're in.
As a grad and as someone who works there now, what was the feeling inside you when you found out she was going to be vice president?
Oh, it was a special moment. There's nothing. We've had some Howard grads do some big things, over the years, but nothing bigger than being in the White House. And, as a dad, I have 2 little girls, and just for them to be able to see somebody that looks like them in one of the highest roles in the nation is just it's a great experience. Absolutely, just a great feeling inside, and the campus was buzzing in a way that it can't really even explain. So it's just great. And then she's come back, of course. And so, just having somebody that really has shared the walkways and the hallways of Howard and just brings a different perspective to the issues that our country is facing. It's just something that's special.
The nation's capital has been at the forefront of many movements and calls for change. Founded in 1980, Howard's media networks continue to be at the forefront, covering each new development. Sean's been a part of this coverage both as a student and now as its lead administrator.
Back in 1980, here in Washington, D.C., we had problems with racism, homelessness, violence, drugs. Today we have problems in this community, racism, violence, drugs. How do you, as an organization, try and address that or try and, shed a light on some of these same issues that we see today, in some ways even more pronounced?
Well, for us, it's really about using our platform to tell these stories, literally telling the stories of homelessness. Because a lot of times people don't understand what's actually happening right in front of them. There's a lot of issue around food scarcity in this city where you would think, there's buildings all over the place. There's lots of money flowing, but that's not to every area of the city. And so how do we tell those stories about those who are in need? There's a lot of, and it's not just, it's not just homeless. There's the elderly that have issues with access to food. And so we're doing a lot of specials on that, really focusing on these local stories that really matter to the community, working with the Capital Area Food Bank to talk about some of the challenges that they see every day.
Tell me what you were thinking when you decided to go to Howard as a student and now go back to Howard. Most people don't have that journey. This is pretty interesting.
No, it is. And it's been a true joy, though. I enjoyed my undergrad experience, worked at the campus radio station and, was the general manager of that station while I was there. And, left Howard for a while and to come back, it's just, it is so enriching, though, to see the students each and every day. To me, that is probably one of the greatest parts of my job, that we get to work with students, the next generation of broadcasters, of talent, of sales executives, of, they go on to do so many great things, and their energy just keeps you going.
Sean Plater, thanks so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.